I like to watch.
What do ballet and wrestling have in common? More than you think, especially when you consider that both are forms of entertainment and art that are physically taxing on the body and both carry with them a risk of addiction to various vices. Filmmaker Darren Aronofsky, no stranger to zeroing in on the darker elements of being human, made two films that, despite their vastly different tones, share similar themes. The Wrestler tells the story of Randy the Ram, an aging wrestler reaching the end of his career and settling scores with his various demons. Black Swan is the story of Nina Sayers, a young ballerina whose career is just beginning as she lands the coveted lead in Swan Lake, right around the time her personal demons start tearing her apart. The two characters would seem to have very little in common, when in reality Aronofsky fashioned them as two sides of the same coin. In that respect, it makes sense that in early stages of development, The Wrestler and Black Swan were supposed to be one film. While The Wrestler unfolds as a gritty faux documentary and Black Swan is more of an erotic psychological thriller, both films deal with the protagonists who are enslaved by their craft and crumbling under their own psychological weight. Aronofsky demonstrates this in a variety of ways. First, let's talk about the appearance of the films. Both films were shot with a verite approach, which emphasizes realism and adds to the overall grittiness of both films. The Wrestler has the appearance of a documentary, with lots of natural color and lighting, and moments of dialogue that seem candid. Black Swan has several moments like this as well, only they tend to appear most often when we see things from Nina's perspective earlier in the film. As her mental state begins to deteriorate, the cinematography behaves accordingly, becoming more disorienting and surreal. Another common element is the focus on brutality found in both the mediums. Ballerinas are often perceived as being delicate, especially compared to the hardcore indie-style wrestling featured in the earlier film. In reality, ballet carries with it a different kind of violence. The feet of dancers are injured in unimaginable ways, distorted and disfigured. Aronofsky embraces this in Black Swan, showing us how Nina's feet are beaten to a bloody pulp. It's interesting to juxtapose the shots of Nina breaking in her point shoes with those of Randy the Ram removing tape from his arms. Both show the preparation involved in the two forms of entertainment that abuse the bodies of their participants. Speaking of self-harm, both films also have that in various degrees. In Black Swan, it's more explicit, as it is part of Nina's mental illness. It starts with a habit of scratching, which escalates into some harsher self-injury directed by her hallucinations. This is in addition to signs of an eating disorder, refusing food, purging, and later some actual drug use that coincides with the crescendo of Nina's breakdown. As for Randy the Ram, his passion has actually become deadly. If he continues to wrestle, his heart will fail sooner than later. This, of course, is accelerated by his drug use. Randy is a veritable force of self-destruction, continually engaging in activities that will bruise, cut, maim, and eventually kill him. Both Ram and Nina are trapped in cycles of self-destruction that parallel the ruthlessness of their respective mediums. Perhaps the most significant similarity between the two films is the manner in which they both end. In The Wrestler, we see Randy engage in what, for all intents and purposes, seems to be his last match. It's the match he wasn't even supposed to fight, the match he only agreed to when everything else in his life fell apart. As for Nina, she's finally succeeded in what she considers her perfect dance, both as the Black Swan, her opposite, and the White Swan, her mirror. This is, of course, after she succumbs to her most twisted delusion yet, in which she appears to murder her rival and foil, Lily, but in reality has stabbed herself. She dances through her increasingly dire injury, just as Randy wrestles his last match with a ticking time bomb of a heart. In both cases, the status of each character at the end remains ambiguous, but more likely than not, pretty grim. When Randy jumps into his finisher, the Ram Jam, the screen goes black before we see it through. We don't know if his heart survived it. Nina also takes a dive as the White Swan falling to her death, real or staged, as the case may be. She looks up ahead, bleeding out, satisfied that she was, in her words, perfect. And while the bystanders call for medical attention, the screen fades into an ethereal white before we can see the outcome. It's a strange parallel. Randy the Ram is at the end of his career, while it seems that Nina's was just beginning. In spite of this, both protagonists are unable to escape their demons, except by seeing the destruction of their vessels, themselves, to its end. They choose to detonate rather than fade, because in the end, it's the only thing that can set them free.
And last but not least, for the strap, we got Tommy Rotten versus Randy the Ram.
It's my turn.